Hey everybody, I'm Scott Leese here with my friend Richard Harris for yet another edition of the Surf and Sales podcast. We are here with my very good friend on the other side of Austin, Texas, Jean Marie Wilke. How you doing, JM?
I'm good. How are you holding up?
We're all right. Okay.
You both sound desperate.
Yeah, well, we're both in like some parenting hell moment, perhaps. I definitely am at the moment right now. So
Oh, it's so easy.
Yeah, so easy. What is it like having a toddler at home while you're trying to work full time right now?
It is pretty much impossible. So both my husband and I have jobs where it requires us to be on the phone all the time and working, and we have a lot of projects that we're working on, customer calls for him. And so trying to deal with somebody that just constantly says up, wants to see what you're doing, wants to join your calls, chasing around the dog, falling off the table, doesn't listen, doesn't really know words. It can definitely pose its challenges. Thank God it's been nice enough weather so I can take some calls and go for a walk, and that's my piece of the day.
Can you put her in the stroller? How old is your daughter?
My son.
Oh, sorry.
Get it right. Just kidding. He's 20 months, so
20,
he's
okay.
not even 2, but he's kind of getting to that age where no, and all those kinds of things. And you don't want him to become a screen junkie. So it's trying to balance, how much Sesame Street can you put on, take also, as well as you don't want him just sitting in front of a TV all day.
Right. So how are you managing your time right now? Like, are you trying to keep your calls as short as possible, for example, or are you trying to limit the number of calls and meetings you're in? I'm curious about that.
I feel like we have a pretty good system. I'm lucky that my husband and I, so every night we look at our calendars, pull them up for the next day, try to organize it. At the beginning of the week, we try to also organize and coordinate our schedules so that there's not too much overlap. And that allows us to have these full calls. And then I also call it out and try to plan different calls throughout the day where I can actually take it on a walk, where I can still pay attention. But I'm also, he's quiet. He's able to get out of the house and have a different change of scenery, which I think has been really helpful too, that I have the luxury to be able to take calls and still be productive.
Right. So, and have you guys gotten to the point now where it's like, okay, starting in 2 weeks, I'm going to be on this hour and off this hour and on, like, are you trying to get ahead of the curve on it at all? Or are you not?
As much as we can. It's tough a couple weeks out, but I would say we try to do it at the beginning of the week. He tends to get customer calls though randomly, so it's a little bit harder for him to plan, unfortunately. So we do it as best as we can and just figure it out. And we do have meetings, and there are times I want to pull my hair out and get a nice adult beverage, but unfortunately, because I'm pregnant, I don't even get that luxury. So.
Oh, you're pregnant again?
Yeah.
Congratulations! I didn't know.
Good timing, right? Thanks.
Hey,
I guess it's a good time.
Yeah.
Stuck in your house, anyways.
Yeah. You certainly. We have certainly learned a whole new art of negotiation in the family. I can just immediately see like how Kathy and I try to negotiate now, how I watch how the boys do it. So I'm a little bit more conscious of it. And you can see the patterns, right? Mm-hmm. You also do, you do get to sort of recognize how appreciative you are that someone is around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I am lucky that Kathy literally can do 80 to 90% or 95% of all the schooling for the boys, and I can work.
Right.
That's lucky. Like, that is really appreciative of that. So when 5 o'clock does come and this is over, Richard's done and Kathy's, going to chill out for a while. So
the wine comes out.
Yeah.
Come on, Kathy, it's vodka, man.
Oh yeah.
Clear liquid.
So JM, tell everybody who doesn't know you what your role is right now and where you're at, what company you work for.
Yeah, so I am the head of sales operations at a company called Qualia, and we are a real estate transaction management platform. So fancy terms, basically we're helping transform the real estate industry and really making the closing process simple, easy, effective through all parties in that transaction. So it's an exciting time to be in that industry, especially being on a cloud-based software when everyone else is on-prem. So we're pretty lucky in that way with this crisis. So I am always thankful that I got lucky enough. Thank you to Scott to pick a company that is really well positioned.
So how did you get there? Go back even further. How did you even get into sales? And I mean, even before your first job, were you doing that? Were you the girl who always, sorry to be so gender specific, but sold the most Girl Scout cookies in your day, or were you that competitive athlete growing up? Like, when did you?
Yeah.
Where did it come from?
I was the competitive person that hated to lose and loved to win. I was anti Girl Scouts. I didn't want to be in the Girl Scouts, Richard.
I'm bad today. I should just shut up.
But yeah, keep going. No, just kidding. But I did always, when we sold the chocolates, I always wanted to be the top seller and figure out different ways to kind of sell as much as possible, even though my parents were very anti-selling. They worked for the state, right? Which I thought was the world's most boring job. It's not, but to me, when I was, little 8-year-old JM, that's what I thought. And then just as time grew on, it was always evident to me that was something that I really wanted to try. And I got lucky enough to kind of stumble across a job that Scott tried to be a sales rep for, and came and ended up actually interviewing and becoming the VP of sales, which, how does that happen? And along the way, I realized that it was the sales piece that I still am extremely passionate for. I love the process and the execution, and just continued that love and the development of people. We kind of went into that, and then realized that all these pieces that I love, I can get that development of people. I can still be super passionate about sales, and I can really deliver and execute on the process piece in my current role, which is sales operations.
So I want to ask a couple of questions. One is just off, when you did go into those contests or fundraisers, right, to sell the candy bars, do you ever remember any idea that you came up with that helped you sell the most? I'm just curious, like is there anything that comes to mind?
No,
No,
I can't even remember what I ate for lunch yesterday right now.
So my next question is, and I want to ask both of you this question because it's fun to understand the dynamics. When you first met JM, Scott, what was your moment, if you remember, of, okay, I want this woman on our team. She gets it. She knows it. And then I also want to know, JM, what was it about Scott? Like, what was it that maybe you didn't even know at the point, but from a leadership standpoint, right? Because I want people to understand how to find each other, right? And as you know, Scott's very good at finding, I am one as well. I call them the disciples, right? He just collects people who just follow him from place to place, right? So I'm just curious about that. So I'll let either one of you go first.
Well, we have a mutual friend who sort of told me about a company that she knew that was looking for salespeople. And I had already been a VP of sales a couple times at this point in time, but I wasn't working. And I'm like, well, sure, I'll talk to anybody. Like, that's kind of been my philosophy from the beginning. Like, I'll talk to anybody about any role and just see what happens. And I think JM orchestrated the introduction between the CEO and me after our mutual friend introduced JM and I. And so I went from Santa Rosa in the North Bay in San Francisco into downtown San Francisco and had lunch with the CEO for like, 45 minutes under the premise of this being an entry level sales role. And, would have been like $125,000 pay cut for me. But after like, a few minutes, I was just like, look, I'm not here to be an entry level sales rep, but I heard, what you guys are doing. It sounds interesting. You're looking to build a sales team. And so just, wanted to talk to you about that. And so JM was already working there. She was the first sales rep that had been hired. And, from my perspective, it was just like super hard worker, super sharp, asks tons of questions, in a very like humble, eager to learn kind of way, implements feedback straight away, was very good at what she did. And we worked together for, 2+ years at this company. Became friends with her husband, bunch of mutual friends as well. A few years go by where we go our separate ways, different jobs. And then I go get a job at Qualia as the senior vice president of sales. And literally like my first phone call basically is to JM. And I'm like, what are you doing right now for work? I need somebody to run sales ops for me. I've become super passionate about like the marriage between the head of sales and the head of sales ops and starting it right away. And JM was always far superior than me when we worked together at all operational things. I always got her help, even though that wasn't her role back then. And she had since moved on and run an SDR team and done operational work and all this stuff. So she was my first hire at Qualia, right? It's like the type of person that I can, give certain projects to and like get out of her way. And she knows, I hope she says that if she has trouble or has questions about things, she'll ask me, I'll, give some guidance or direction. And then I just let her run with it, right? Far, far smarter than me, far superior than me at all of these things. Never have to worry about her.
I hate him to say this.
Never have to worry about her work ethic or, her attitude or anything like that. Just phenomenal. Like, she knows this and we're pals and whatnot. But if I'm going to go start a company, tomorrow, like she's on my speed dial. Right. So.
Fair enough. Jan, what about you? What was your impression?
Yeah. So obviously, Scott comes in and I'm like, Lena, what? He's a VP. Why didn't you tell me any of this? She's like, maybe he's a little bit overqualified. But yeah, I would think so. And he comes in and immediately just changes the direction of the entire company. And we actually can start selling. And it was an immediate, I wanted to work for someone like that because, you knew that he was going to be successful and you could just tell it just oozed out of his skin. And he, was really humble and he was easy to relate to and was, he wears backwards caps and t-shirts all the time. And it's somebody that isn't, trying to be someone that they're not. And he loves music and, you can really relate to someone like that, which I think is really important as a leader. And he's also really vulnerable. So he really knew everything that he was talking about, was able to help coach, and I could immediately see changes. And so that just really didn't stop. And so I think that's really why, I really started to love working with him. And then too, as I came to Qualia too, kind of like he alluded to, but, he's a very trusting leader, which to me is something super important to me. I want somebody that, trusts me, allows me to do my projects and think of ideas because I am constantly thinking of new ideas and ways to improve something. So I always think everything's always broken. So how do we constantly improve it and make it better?
How would, and I ask because I know this of Scott too, but let's say you had to find someone new. How would you try to figure out if they were going to be a trusting leader, if they were going to give you just the right amount of runway to let you stay on target, but also let you explore a little bit?
Ooh, that's a really good question. If I were to try to think of different ways, I would ask them how they have basically trying to get at how they've managed projects with their teams in the past. So hearing just, you know, them talk about a project they were really passionate about that they got off the ground, or also understanding, tell me about a time when you had somebody came to you with an idea, and how did that idea kind of come to fruition. um, those would probably be some of the more important ones to just understand. Are they going to be micromanaging? Are they going to listen to what you say, give you feedback on, is your idea might be absolutely terrible, and Scott, what I really like is he will tell you if your idea is terrible. He'll tell you, okay, all right, I'll go back to the drawing board. That one wasn't good, but I got a million more. So I think that you can really easily see just by hearing how they talk about that, how they would manage you.
So what I want you to do now for us is try to get like super tactical. And it's really like top of mind for me because I had this conversation earlier today, like a few hours ago. Okay. And it basically is like, if you go into a brand new startup right now, okay, and they have nothing, like no process, no enablement, no operation, like what are the first 3 things that somebody who's brand new in a head of sales ops role should be thinking about and should do?
Tracking. So it's very difficult to go back in time and start tracking things that you wish you would have tracked in the future. So thinking through, what are all the things in a company that is 5 stages from me, 3 stages from me right now? What are they tracking? And how do I make sure that I am managing those metrics and at least getting the raw data so that later down the line, I'm not necessarily going to use it, but later down the line, I have the insights I need to actually drive
What
action
kind of
in the
tracking?
business.
And I know it can depend on what you're selling, but are there some generic tracking things so that we don't just say, go track stuff?
Yeah, just stuff, no. So things like demos. When did you set the demos? Did the demos hold? How many demos are you doing on there? Different opportunity stages, the reason that you're losing deals, the inbounds that are coming in, inquiries that are coming in, how long it's taking reps to actually respond to those inquiries.
We tracked a lot of metrics at Quality.
Yeah.
A lot.
But that's where you start, right?
Tracking's number 1, JM. Like, what's the next couple things that the new sales ops person should be focused on?
The next one is building process that's repeatable. So how do you make sure that you will never scale an organization if you don't have a repeatable process that people have directions to follow? And so you need to be able to, going back to tracking too, you need to track what is the process and then make it really easy to implement and make sure that the reps are following up on it. And then along the same lines, the next thing that you really need to do is make sure that your reps understand and that you're training them and that they're really truly actually implementing and that the process is really working.
So that last part is something that I think many organizations fail at and underutilize their sales operations group. It's one of the things that you and I collaborated on really early and really heavily. And I let you run with and let your whole team run with. And I don't even know how many people report to you now, but I think it was like 8 or so when I left. So talk about the role that sales ops can play and perhaps should play in sales organizations.
Yeah, so you're saying just in reference to how involved they should be with everything.
How involved and like what specific ways can sales ops participate? What things are they training on? I've had the conversation with people before and they're like, wait, you have your sales ops people run trainings for the account executives?
Yeah.
And have this like bewildered look on their face. And I'm like, yeah, all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that sales ops should be, basically almost like a rep, almost like a sales manager. And so because you are just like a sales manager, you have the yin and the yang, and the sales manager is going to go and they're going to coach on, here's the strategy of a deal, or here are the things to say. But all the other things, the pipeline management, are people executing on the process that you have? Are they continuously executing on the process that you have? Is their workflow efficient, right? Do they have an efficient day lined up? Are they planning all those kinds of things? So I really like to be kind of one of the managers and one of the reps. And so I get extremely involved and think that helps our team to understand what's really going on with the reps better, as well as really understanding what's going on with the managers and how we can really marry the two to really make an efficient sales organization that continues to win repeatedly.
I've got kid drama. Richard, ask the next question.
No problem. So how, and I think you answered, but I'm going to ask it differently. Where would you draw the line if you had sales enablement and sales ops? How would you, I don't know if you guys have that at Qualia, but where because then all of a sudden now you got ops training, enablement, who's supposed to sort of train. Like, have you seen that yet, or have you guys just not had to experience it?
Are they different?
Yeah, I'd be curious.
I don't know. I'm asking the question because I think
I
know big organizations that have that difference, and I'm asking, like, I don't know what the difference is, and I feel like people would like to know too.
Yeah, I think that there's obviously, so a sales enablement person to me is somebody that can really build amazing trainings and deliver content and make sure that the content is being used. That's at least kind of how we have the content piece, at least, is how we have our sales enablement. We don't really have a full sales enablement person, somebody that kind of does it as part of their role. But I think that most of the training, though, needs to come from the sales ops person, because they understand the pipeline more and they can really deliver that. And the sales enablement person can come in with, here's the content, here's how we can talk about the content, all those kinds of things. But I'm also not super familiar with sales enablement because I haven't worked in an organization. So I can't really speak too intelligently on that specific one.
Do you feel that they're different, Richard?
In my head they are, but it's been so, look, I haven't been a practitioner at that level in a long time. So in my head, operations is the data and the metrics and the conversion rates. Enablement is the one who takes that data and teaches the reps how to use strategies and tactics to execute and improve the data. But it could be that I'm micromanaging that process too much, right? Like that it's like, well, Richard, wouldn't you want the person who understands the data to teach about it? Well, it depends.
That's where I land. That's my philosophy. And I did not separate the two out. So I sort of expect sales ops and sales enablement to be the same thing. And the practitioners in the organization should be able to do both and fill both roles. And that's certainly how I thought about it over the last few years, and in the role at Qualia. I think if you get large enough, perhaps you have to sort of siphon off and get even more specific. But I've spent the majority of my time in companies who are in year 0 to year 3 or 4, right? Mm-hmm. And so perhaps I haven't been in the organization long enough to see it split, because it has to. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Same. I think that they're really intertwined, and I have a guy that's really focused on data, but I also like to have people that, even though they're super focused just on that one thing and on the analytics piece and that kind of thing, he's also extremely capable of doing the training piece and and he can own some of that too, because I think that it gets people more bought into the data. But I think that it is a nature of the size of our organization too, and kind of our maturity.
That's my next question. So Scott said you have 8 reports for sales ops?
I have 5.
5, okay. And how many sales reps are you supporting with that?
We support like 60 something.
60 something. So almost one.
It fluctuates, so it's down to that right now.
And then how many sales managers also, just out of curiosity?
6.
Okay. So and you've been there long enough to grow, right? And it's cool that Scott's there, because he's like, look, I know Scott, he'll hire an ops person even when he's the only sales rep. We got a kid coming in, but incoming, and it's not Jay. Oh, it's Janet. We have a wife.
Hi, Jim. How are you? All right. We'll talk later.
Hi, Janet. How did you know when to add the next ops person and the next ops person? Like, is it a headcount thing? Is it a data thing? Is it a combination? Like, what can we tell people about this is when you should think about it?
Yeah. So I don't know how good of a person I am with that, because I basically go until I break, which probably isn't the best way to do it. But
that's why Scott hired you. He's hired you just for that, because that's how he's wired.
I think that Scott was really helpful in like, hey, maybe you should start, like, he probably just saw me going, no, I think that it's once you start realizing that you're not able to support the core functionality of things, or you have so many projects on your list of things that you want to accomplish that you're just simply never going to catch up and never able to do it, and they're business critical things. So for example, realizing, hey, we really need somebody that can manage these 10 different like business critical items, but until you get to that point where you have multiple business critical items that are not getting delivered, and you're pretty close to there, I don't think that there's really.
So so you got 5 direct reports on ops, without giving away too much, but what does person A do versus person B versus person C? Because I think that's the part I'm trying to get to, because for the people who are in sales ops who are like, when should I ask and how do I ask for it? That's what I'm trying to get to.
The first person that I hired was a generalist when he started. So he was really doing, building of things in Salesforce, but he could also train the reps, have pipeline management meetings. So kind of like we were saying, where it's somebody that can do the enablement as well as the sales ops piece. And then as we continued to mature, as we got more reps that we needed to support, and that project list continued to grow, we were able to get somebody in another department. So she was actually our office manager, but she was phenomenal and had a ton of potential. And so I saw that, and so I said, let me get her half-time, which really probably ended up being like 3/4 to full-time, but we just positioned it as half. Sorry, kid just fell.
It happens.
This is my life. Kid falls off the table at least once a day. So she was really fantastic in terms of being able to also help with kind of more of the entry level stuff, which we needed, which was a lot of like lead scraping and that kind of thing. And so that was really good. And then as again, the team grew a little bit more, I was finally able to hire somebody that was more of that Salesforce person that could do all the like more advanced things, right? Not a Salesforce engineer. We don't really need it. We're not big enough. And I don't even know how I truly feel about having a true engineer unless it's, you have like a really specific need. But she's phenomenal at building flows and really detailed stuff. And then later I was able to get, we had another need for a lot of entry level finding leads. Our industry is extremely difficult to find contacts. I've gone to 100 different vendors and nobody has them. There are not these people are not really on the internet. And so I have 2 lead development reps that are able to dedicate to that.
So you've got someone who can do some enablement stuff. You've got someone on finding data, finding new leads, right? Do you have somebody who also is sort of data cleanliness? Like that's part of their
yeah. So the LDRs, so our lead development reps, are also doing cleaning. And then one thing I forgot to say, so the guy that came in as the generalist, I moved him over to really a data role. So he's really become this, the data wizard, but somebody that is deep in Tableau, BigQuery, all those different things, and can run, build extremely detailed Excel reports, and models and those kinds of things.
Really, an
you said a word that has prompted this next question. You used the word vendor, and this is interesting because we have not gotten into this. Is like our 65th, 60 something podcast episode, and we have not talked at all about vendor.
Age, right?
Yeah, very funny. We have not talked at all about vendor relations, vendor management, vendor negotiation. And this is something that, you handle basically, where you used to handle at least, when I was there. Yeah. So, what are some of your tips on, vendor negotiation and vendor relations and vendor management and things like that? Right.
Yeah. I mean, the management of the vendor comes at the very, before you even pick it. And it's really, really important to understand, how does their team work? How are they with feedback? Will they take your feedback? So an example is, so we have SalesLoft is one of our vendors. And one of the things that I think is fantastic about them as a vendor is you can give them feedback and you actually see the feedback happening, and their support is answering you, right away with a knowledgeable and intelligent answer, versus another vendor that we have, and I don't necessarily need to say their name, but it's a signing software, and just to have something got disabled somehow. They don't know how, nobody touched it, but somehow it got disabled, and it took me 10 hours of going back and forth with their support, or on hold with their support, or talking to their support to resolve it. So I think that finding, in terms of managing a vendor, understanding that from the get-go. And then the other thing that I look for in a vendor is, how are they in terms of forward thinking? So I want to pick a vendor that's constantly iterating and making positive changes on a regular basis. And so that goes into the management of the vendor as well, because I know that I can talk to them about it. I know that they're going to kind of manage me as well in the process and get me amped.
Let's say you're trying to figure that out with the vendor. Let's say I do work for SalesLoft. Kyle must love us because they get more play on our podcast than any other. And it's not set up. That's the irony. What kind of questions would you ask to figure out if they're a good vendor? Now that you've got this experience, right? Like you've been through this, you can kind of look for something. Are you talking to their current customers to ask about how they solve problems? What do you ask the vendor, or what are you doing to sniff them out a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll try to see if I can back channel any current customers. By now, I usually can back channel somebody, but every business's experience is so different. So our need might be slightly different, and so our experience might be different. But so I'm asking, what are support turnaround times? How often are you coming out with new, engineering pushes? Walk me through your last 6 months of product improvements, things like that, to really understand who are they and what is their DNA. And then I look at a lot of reviews online, because I actually think that they're pretty accurate. But I do think, the back channeling piece is really good. Man, I have an emergency.
This is the first podcast where we've had an emergency. Go ahead, JM. Go deal with your emergency thing. Well, what the interesting thing
My
is,
child is bleeding all over the place. It's great.
You need to go?
yes, she needs
I
to
think
go.
I should probably
If you know Michael, her husband, you definitely know JM needs to go. JM, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks.
Richard and I will stay on.
Yeah.
We'll have you back. Yeah.
All right. Bye,
Yeah.
everybody.
Bye.
Quarantine life. Sorry
Quarantine
about
life.
that.
That should be our podcast, Quarantine Live.
Yeah, just keep the recording going for another minute or two.
Yeah.
That's the first time that's happened. You know, it's bound to happen when you think about it. During this particular podcast right now, my kids came crashing through the front door, okay, and started rolling around, wrestling on the floor. This is after they were supposed to go on a couple-mile run to get some energy out. So I had to pause that.
You send your kids on a couple-mile run?
Yeah,
how far would you go?
2-3 miles.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
Dude.
I mean, they're 12 and 10.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're running to school and back and around the block. We have it all mapped out. Anyways, the point is they crash through the door. I have to put myself on mute. Then Janet, you know, pops in and says hi, and JM's kid falls off the table, and now, you know, she's got a bleeder over there. There's a lot of things happening in this episode right here.
Yes. Yeah. All we got was Taco Bell delivered while we were recording this. But hey, I want to come back to this ops stuff, right? Because you're big on ops, and I think we should focus on this. And I've heard you say it, but I want to hear the reality of it. As soon as you're hired as VP of sales, you've heard you say that ops is your first hire. Yeah. Do you care if you have 0 reps? Do you care if you have, I need at least 3 reps? Like, I should be the ops person for the first 10 reps? Like, in reality, what's that look like in your mind?
I don't think you need an ops person if there is no reps.
Fair enough.
Okay. Right? Because there's some work that I can do to figure out what our pitch is going to be, what our message is going to be, right? All the competitors, the objections. There's a lot of this like pre-go-to-market work that I can do. But then I got to bring that ops person in before I start going and executing. If there's already reps there, I'm hiring the head of sales ops like as fast as I possibly can. Honestly, before I go to a particular job, I've already started the process of seeing who's available. So when I was interviewing at Qualia along with ResearchGate and MindTouch and all these other companies that I was checking out at the time, I was pinging people in my network like, hey, sales ops head, are you looking right now? Are you looking right now? Oh, you're in San Diego, you're in Berlin, you're in Colorado, you're in Austin, right? I was already kind of laying groundwork, right? And I was already having conversations with all of the founders expressing, you know, my desire and my need.
That was my next question. What was, so not that it's, you know, written in the deal, but is it a requirement if you were to go and take a VP of sales job that you're like, hey, my first hire is going to be this, and I need to know I can get it quickly when I say it's time?
I won't take the job.
Okay.
I won't take the job. I won't take the job unless I'm not, you know, it doesn't get put in writing or something like that.
Right.
Like,
I understand.
I'm not taking the job unless, you know, I have the trust. To JM's point earlier about, you know, needing a trusting leader. Like, I need a trusting leader. I need a CEO or a founder who believes that I know how to build a sales org. And the way that I want to build a sales org is build it right from the beginning. If you heard JM talking earlier, she talked about, you know, how important it is to track things correctly right from the beginning, because you can never go back, right? You have all this lost time and this lost data if you don't get it right from the start. And so I'm trying to build things to scale right away. So yeah, I won't take the job, and all of the, you know, VPs and you know, managers and directors and whatnot that I counsel and talk to, you know, I preach this to them all the time. Make sure you take a job that you're going to have support in a sales operations capacity.
Dog wasn't going outside, so
Now it's the dog's turn. By the way, I have seen a picture of JM's son. He is okay. He definitely has blood all over his sweatshirt though. So this will be a story. We'll tell this story to him, for years to come. So.
We'll just have to play this episode for him. So,
yeah.
And the most important part is, oh, my son has blood all over him. Yeah. What's the next question? Like, she just.
Well, you're sitting there going, do you need to go? Yes, right. She needs to.
Of course. But she has a husband there. Like, how bad is it? So.
Oh, well, poor Mike.
I'm glad everybody's okay. So,
yeah.
What are other things that you would tell people to think of if they're thinking about, like I was trying to get into some detail with JM, and she got into a little bit, but like if you have 2 or 3 or 4 people in ops, how do you see the silos? And not that they're silos, but how do you see what people are supposed to handle responsibility wise? Or do you leave it up to the ops person to figure it out?
I have a couple different categories that I can think of, but really the way it would work would be, I can tell when projects are starting to slow down in terms of the execution of them, right? So I might say to JM, hey, we need this, that, and the other, right? And if she could get all that stuff turned around inside of a week, she's a superhero and, has capacity. When those things become 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or the catalog of things starts to back up, then, I'm having conversations with her like, hey, I think you need more people. And she's like, no, I don't. I'm like, yeah, you need more people because this stuff is not getting done, fast enough. And I'm not telling you that you're not working hard enough. Like, I get it. You need more horsepower here. So if we were going to bring in more people, help me make the case to the CFO. What specifically is this person going to do that we, can't do right now, right? So I remember when, we needed somebody specifically who's like really, really good at Salesforce, specifically to like build code in there and manage all. I don't even know how to speak about it, right? That's not my area of expertise, right? But we didn't have somebody who knew how to do that, like who had that engineering kind of capability. And so at one point that was our ask, like, hey, we need another head who's going to be able to handle this particular part right here. And so that's kind of how the dialogue would go. I'd say, look, you need another person. If I gave you another person or 2, what specifically would they do? And what skills would they have that nobody on our team has right now? And then that would help me and her make the case, to a layer above us to go get that headcount.
And to borrow a phrase from our friend Rob Jepson, right? Would you try to dollarize that? This person's going to do this, and because they can do this, we can accomplish that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I just want to make sure people get that part, not just come up with a laundry list of to-dos.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Whenever you're making the case to get more headcount, if you're in the, head of sales seat, it's like, okay, now I need to dollarize it and explain to them how this is going to turn into increased productivity and increased revenue, or, increased metrics as well, whatever, that better accuracy of data, which is going to help our forecasting, which is going to blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
So Matt, I'm going to ask, what advice do you give? And I know I'm turning this on to you because you've been more of a practitioner than I have been on this. So that's why I'm asking is, let's say I am the sales ops person, but I've got a slightly stubborn head of sales. And that's not you. Like, I know you.
That's definitely me. That's definitely, I could definitely be stubborn.
But to your point, you're also willing to listen, right? What does a sales ops person need to bring to the VP of sales to say, hey, I need help? Like maybe you and JM knew each other, right? There was a relationship there. What's it like when all of a sudden you've got a new VP of sales? You've been the sales ops person for a year. You got to earn that trust of that VP of sales, right? How would you want to be approached by your ops person just to even ask? Because I think sometimes people are afraid to ask for help.
I think, first of all, I would hope that you can build a relationship with your team where they're not afraid to ask for help. Right. And then if they are afraid to ask for help, or they do just have that, like, extreme ownership kind of gene where they're just like, I have to do this, and it's on me and everything. You gotta be aware enough to look at your team and your people and recognize that maybe they're about to break, whether they know it or not, or their productivity is slowing down or waning in some capacity, or if mistakes are starting to happen. You just got to be aware of the situation, and you might have to bring it to them, and so I need to be able to be proactive and be good at, it's not really conflict, but like I need to be able to bring up this particular subject that's like, hey, I think you need more help because this is not quite working as well as it was supposed to, or as it was, a month ago. Right. And that's, maybe that's constructive criticism. It doesn't feel like criticism to me. It just feels like me trying to be helpful and me trying to say, look, you need more support. And I haven't, I haven't really realized it maybe till now. It's on me to help you get it. So let's figure out together how to get you more support.
So I'm going to ask you one more question. I know we'll wrap it up, but this comes from a conversation we had earlier today on someone else's podcast about AI. Like your prediction was, what is AI going to do? Right.
Yeah.
So AI is certainly starting to birth itself heavily in the ops world, right? Because that's where the data exists. How do you see that playing out even in the near term? Do you see it yet, or are they still in the data collection phase and a data analyzation phase before they can start sort of AI?
I don't think it's just in those phases. I think it's entered the content phase.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
What I mean is leaders and organizations are close enough with AI now where they can create, or they're trying to create, content that's relevant for all of the different personas from all of their different sellers, that doesn't require a team of 50 SDRs or 50 AEs to be generating email copy on their own every single day. I think that the organization is trying to own that. And that to me is like AI. It's like the hive mind, right? And that's what I'm seeing. I have a client right now who's using outreach. And one of the things that I saw when I dove in is like every single SDR has all of their own sequences and cadences and all that kind of thing. And I'm like, whoa, there's a different way to do this here. Like, has anybody gone in and looked at what these guys are writing and what they're saying? And I dive in and look, and it's like, yeah, I wouldn't publish that. I wouldn't put my name on that thing, let alone the company's name, right? And so just controlling that messaging and using all the data that you have that tells you when to send it and what words to put in there and what persona to target and all that, and then sending it out uniformly, that to me is AI. So I think it's entered into the content kind of.
Interesting.
era.
And so do you feel like, and I don't think we've ever talked about it. Do you enjoy the ABM, account-based management approach?
I do. Yeah. I do.
You have
it's so, I mean, I have a client that has this issue right now where they're calling, and there's franchises all over the place, and they're just like crossing wires left and right, and it's a mess, right? It's like, oh my gosh, this is a terrible selling experience. It's a terrible buying experience. It's terrible for our internal and external brand. We got to fix it. So it doesn't even feel optional to me anymore. It feels just compulsory. You have to be doing this.
So ABM is a requirement at this point as much as sales loft or outreach is for the team.
I think so. I think there's some types of sales where you can get
transactional sale may not be quite ABM.
Right. But anything
for the long tail, but not the short tail.
Yeah. But anything above that, it feels mandatory to me. Yeah.
Cool. Well, as always, it's fun. It's always good to see you, brother. So
it was different. It was different. I'm thinking maybe for the art for this episode, we just put a picture of Hudson with his bloody sweatshirt up rather than.
Oh my God, that would be hilarious. I want to see him on us. We would probably get tracked down for Child Protective Services.
Yeah,
we would not. It's probably not good for us.
Better not do that.
Yeah, not good for our brand. All right,
Well,
man. Have a good weekend.
Thanks everybody for joining us. Good chatting, Richard and JM. Even though you're not here.
Thanks everybody. Thank you, JM.
Bye-bye.